Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And don't forget, you can check us out on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Twitter handle is AWF Union Podcast. Let's go to line number one. Welcome one of our regulars and a sponsor, I might add. That would be the Heat and Frost Insulators, LMCT. That's the Labor Management Cooperative Trust. And the man behind it all, Mr. Pete Ielmini, my guy from New Jersey. Mr. Ielmini, how are we doing today, brother?
Hey, how you doing, Flash?
We're doing good. It's hard to believe. A couple of days before Christmas, getting a little scary out there with this new variant in the state of Ohio. In fact, in northeastern Ohio is way on top compared to other parts of the nation. I know you're in Jersey. Similar situation there? What's the story there, Pete?
Yeah, it's very crazy out here as well. Much like Ohio and probably much like most parts of the country. Everyone has a concern with this new strand. Supposedly, it's not supposed to be as harmful or the effects are as severe as the Delta virus is, but, no one's really sure. And unfortunately, there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of concern, and a lot of people want to get tested, and testing seems to be an issue now. Takes all day just to get a rapid test, and to get a PCR test is taking 3 to 5 days. And to ensure someone is virus-free before the holiday is kind of tough. And
yeah,
a lot of people are scared.
Yeah, rightly so. Understood. Well, let's talk about infrastructure. I know it's a weird segue, but that is what you want to get into today. And I also want to bring up Kamala Harris. Last Thursday, there was a meeting, and I believe it was at the AFL-CIO headquarters, and it had to deal with lead in our water. And that's been a topic for, my gosh, decades. There's a lot of young kids, especially in poorer communities, that are suffering from lead poisoning because the pipes aren't up to speed. So let's start there, because this infrastructure bill, that is now law. There's some components in there that's going to change all that, and apparently they want to even add more money to this. Why don't you explain? Let's start with that meeting at the White House with the vice president. What's the story there, Pete?
Yeah, that was very exciting to be able to see, and I was actually in the House of Labor, the AFL-CIO building, to be able to have a press conference with the vice president, to be able to have our administration of the federal government at the top end recognize union labor is a milestone by itself. And without a doubt, the Biden-Harris administration is extremely labor-friendly, and we definitely have friends in the White House looking after our trade unions and our union contractors. And it was refreshing to have the vice president speak about something that should have been done a long time ago, decades ago, and that's getting lead out of our society. Lead pipes have been used well over 100, 200 years. In fact, lead pipes even date back even to the Roman Empire. And part of the fall of the Roman Empire was disease, and there was many diseases that were associated with that. But believe it or not, lead poisoning was part of it. And the reason why lead was used for piping is that it was easy to work with. It's easy to melt, easy to shape, and when technology was at a low level compared to today, lead became the popular choice of pipes. And over the century, it's been rid out of installing, but in the older communities and in the older states, lead pipes are still very common to be used. They're very old, but it's very common. There are 6 states that have the most lead pipe compared to the rest of the country. For example, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, New York, New Jersey. Missouri, Wisconsin, Indiana, Texas, and Minnesota are the top 6 states that have a tremendous amount of lead in their either common utilities or even in the homes, in our schools, and older buildings. And finally, we have some legislation and some money to be able to remove lead pipes and be able to have it replaced with standard iron pipe or copper or PVC, whatever the choice of the new material would be, but to be able to make it safe to drink. And it's such a common sense type of reality of we should, as Americans, be able to have a clean water system. And Vice President Harris made it very clear that they feel that every American should be able to have lead-free drinking water at their disposal, to drink, to be able to bathe in, but be able just to make it healthy. And a lot of our communities with less funding seems to be the communities that need the assistance the most. Not just in homes, it's in the public utility lines, underground, under the streets. It's in our school systems. And it's a very expensive process to be able to rid the lead pipe because it becomes a renovation project, and that's extremely expensive. But the government, through this infrastructure bill, has allotted $2.9 billion a year, billion with a B, over the next 5 years. And that's going to be a tremendous boost to be able to address the lead pipe situation. And in addition to that, it isn't just a lead pipe, it's also lead paint. Lead paint is also have been used, it was used 40, 50 years ago as a coating, whether it be a coating on a pipe or even a coating on interior and exterior walls. And much like asbestos, if it's not disturbed, it's not going to be an issue. But if it is exposed, lead poisoning can also come from the paint. So this bill is going to address not only the piping and our water system, but also a portion of it's going to be dedicated for lead remediation in the walls that the paint is on.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of components to it, and it's certainly badly needed. I have to ask you, Pete. Now, you come from the heat and frost insulators, mechanical insulation. How does that fit into what we're talking about?
Well, it fits in. It fits in very nicely. Replacing the pipe itself is not our line of work. That's for our brothers of the Plumbers and Steam Fitters Association. You know, they're going to be in charge of replacing that pipe. That's their field. They're experts in being able to doing that.
Sure.
And I'm going to say most water lines do not get insulated, but there are some that do, especially at the pump stations and at the utility companies where water's got to be protected from freezing. However, just the fact of there's going to be renovations done to piping system is going to spearhead more work, not only for the mechanical insulation industry, but also a lot of the trades. And that's the wonderful part of this infrastructure bill. It's targeted to increase the infrastructure, which is the building and the transportation systems of this country. But it's going to increase commerce in the construction business generally, and it's going to affect all of our construction trades. It's going to have a tremendous increase of work for all of the trades, including mechanical insulation. Lead remediation in the paint is something that we, the insulators and asbestos workers were prepared for 20 years ago. Some of our locals, some of our contractors are prepared to remove lead paint, either off the pipes or anywhere paint is being used. And the premise of that is that when we did asbestos removal, and in the process of asbestos removal, anything that was inside the containment, in the asbestos containment, we can also rid the lead paint and be able to get that as well. The procedures for asbestos abatement and lead abatement in the industrial sector are very similar. And it's very cost effective to remove the lead paint on a pipe after the asbestos was removed. So we're excited for this opportunity of lead remediation that's going to be conducted over the next 5 years, and I can see it even going longer than that. There's going to be a tremendous amount of work for all of the trades. And this is just one small part of this massive infrastructure bill that is now law. And we're going to see an influx in construction commerce over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years because of it.
It's about time America caught up because we were way, way, way overdue. No doubt about that. Pete, I got to take a quick break. Pete Ielmini joining us on our live line, as he does each and every month here on the show. Mechanical Insulators, LMCT, as I indicated at the top of the show. A lot of job opportunities. We're going to talk about the job opportunities primarily in heat and frost and the labor protections in that bill. We're getting into Davis-Bacon stuff. Later in the show, Tracy Cutright will be joining us out of Erie, Pennsylvania, and he's pretty happy. They finally settled a strike against Erie Strayer. He comes to us from Iron Workers Local 851. That's later in the show. Back in a few minutes.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens. Now, back to Ed Flash Ferens with America's Workforce.
And we are available on 6 platforms. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Pandora, and Stitcher. And when you get an opportunity, just sign up, receive our shows on a regular basis, and give us a rating. We always like those 5-star ratings, so keep them coming. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's go back to our live line, rejoin Pete Ielmini. Pete heads the Labor Management Trust on behalf of the Mechanical Insulators. National website is insulators.org. I want to keep hitting that, but his website is mechanicalinsulators, LMCT.com. Pete, I know you want to talk about the real infrastructure, and the Build Back Better bill is kind of the human infrastructure. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty there, but in our first conversation, we were talking about the vice president of the meeting at the AFL-CIO headquarters last Thursday, where Kamala Harris unveiled the lead pipe and paint remediation action plan. And you pointed out the law will provide almost $15 billion over 5 years. My question, is that enough? Will that do it, or is that just going to get the ball rolling and hopefully more money will be coming in? What's your take on that?
Well, I don't think anyone really has a full grasp on the diversity and the vastness of lead piping. And it's going to be open up Pandora's box. And I do believe that $15 billion is a considerable amount of funding that's going to drive this industry. Now, whether it's going to be enough or not, we're all going to find out together. But it's not underfunded, where it's going to have initial promise and then it's going to tail off because the funding's not there. There's going to be a substantial amount of money to be able to kick this off and kick this off properly. And more importantly than that, it's going to generate the awareness to our construction community and the end users on how important this is going to be. And if there's going to be more money needed, I think it'll be easier for our leaders in Washington to be able to allocate more money once they see the benefits of it. And being able to raise the level of the health of this country, I think, is imperishable, and I think it's going to be affected of it. One of the aspects of lead poisoning, it affects children more than it affects adults, and affects the nervous system of their developing brains. It does affect the learning capability of children. Mm-hmm. In adults, it does affect blood pressure. It does affect blood poisoning, and it does have some serious effects. But it has more lasting effects that are permanent, that are not reversible in children. And this is something that I'm glad it is finally being addressed with some serious funding behind it.
Long overdue, no doubt. Well, with that being said, and this infrastructure bill, which is $1.2 trillion, $1.2 trillion, quite significant. It is law. And Pete, don't you think right now this is the best time to get into construction? I mean, the opportunities are endless right now, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you hit on that, because I was going to talk about it anyway. If anybody is interested in construction, in union construction, now is the time. And I know what the date is. I know it's just before Christmas, but now is the time to go on the websites and make phone calls and find where the local union office is and sign up for an apprenticeship program. Anyone that's going to be involved in construction should get trained. You're going to have a career because of this law. You're going to have a career to building this infrastructure of this country, not only for 10 years. It's going to spur on to 20 to 30 to 40 years. This is a monumental law that is going to change our country's infrastructure. And that's roads, and that's bridges. That's the rail system. That is going to be airports. It's going to be our energy grid system, the generation of electrical power to our transfer stations, the storage of energy. There's going to be a tremendous amount of money put toward electric vehicles. And I know electric vehicles is something that's going to be part of our future, but we got to build a grid system that's going to be able to handle potentially 20 years from now, everybody plugging their car in at night with their air conditioning going. And right now, our energy grid system is nowhere close to be able to handle that. We have to be able to have a power system to generate electricity to replace the fossil fuels that we're using today. And all of this development, it's like when you do something small in your house and you replace a pipe in your bathroom. Well, you're going to end up replacing the sink, the toilet, and you're going to have the walls open. Before you know, you're doing a whole renovation of your bathroom, which is a large project. And it's going to be the same way in this country. We're going to be improving our road systems and bridges, and we're going to be able to open up highways that they don't get much traffic now because of it's not functioning well because a lot of the traffic. But it's going to open up commerce. We're going to increase union construction jobs that are going to be related to it. We're going to be opening up parts of this country that is not easily accessible because of our road system is not sufficient enough. We talk about a boost to the economy. This is going to be steroids for our economy. And to be involved in construction, now is when you want to be able to get involved in it. You want to be able to be trained. You want to be a journey person when all of this work starts hitting strides. And there's going to be a tremendous amount of work opportunities, not just for the mechanical insulators, but for all of the building trades.
And Pete, when it comes to mechanical insulation, we've had this discussion before, but we get new listeners all the time. I think you should reference the fact that you hear so much about climate change. There's a lot of climate change going on. I mean, the wacky weather is a big part of that. But when it comes to mechanical insulation, you're talking about energy conservation. That is so darn important in going forward. And I just want you to touch on that, if you can, as far as the opportunities in that line of work, right?
Sure. Part of the infrastructure law, it discusses throughout the law about energy efficiency. And energy efficiency is right up our alley of mechanical insulation. Our trade as insulators, we've been energy efficiency experts for well over 100 years. Everything that we do, we conserve energy. We conserve the fuel that's needed to be able to heat something. That boiler is designed to be able to supply heat to a building. Pipes and ductwork are going to be supplying that heat to the various rooms. We have to get the heat that gets supplied to those rooms the same temperature that it comes from outside the boiler or close to it. So the boiler has to work less. The less the boiler is working, the less fuel is going to get used and the less pollution is going to emit. And it's a very simple example of it, but if you take that boiler, multiply it times 3 million boilers in this country. If you take that same premise and you talk about air conditioning units, same thing as that. It takes energy, it takes power, it takes fuel to make that compressor work. The less the compressor has to work, the less fuel and the less pollution is being emitted. So when we talk about climate jobs and global warming and clean energy, mechanical insulation is right in the middle of it. There are other trades, there are other technologies involved in it as well, of course, but mechanical insulation is a serious component of any energy efficient system. And mechanical insulation and energy efficiency is always related to fossil fuel, gas and oil, and rightfully so. But what also has to be brought into the discussion is that whenever we get to a carbon neutral society, that means when we're not using carbon fuel, we're going to be solely based on wind and solar and hydro and thermal, other forms of energy. Energy efficiency is going to play even a bigger role in those situations because those are limited resources. You can always put more fuel into a tank. You can always crank up that boiler, but when it's nighttime, you can't increase the sunlight. And the storage of power and the storage of energy is going to be extremely important. And how we use that and how efficient we are with that is going to play a big role. And long after I am gone, the role of the mechanical insulation industry is going to be a huge factor in our energy production in the future. But I can't emphasize it enough. The time is now to be able to get involved in our apprenticeship programs, and you're going to reap the benefits of this law that was just passed this past month for the next 20 to 30 years, at least.
Yeah, this legislation's got some teeth to it, no doubt about that. And I'm so glad you referenced the lead pipe and the opportunities there. And that's just one of so many different components. And the other thing, we didn't have time to touch on this, is the labor standards, the labor protections. Maybe we could save that for the January podcast. And Davis-Bacon, there's a lot of people that don't even understand that part. But that's what you're here for, because you're the teacher, man. You're the instructor here, and I appreciate it. I learned so much just talking to you about mechanical insulation and the fact that you're spreading it around. We're talking about opportunities for all the trades, and that's exactly why Sean McCarvey, president of the North American Building Trades, was at the AFL-CIO headquarters last week when they unveiled that program dealing with lead paint and lead piping all around America. All right, my friend, I'm going to leave it on that note. Great job as usual. You take care. I'm sure you got some last-minute Christmas shopping to do, right? I mean, you're a guy. Isn't that the case?
Hey, I'm an American like everybody else. If there's a way to spend money, I'm going to find a way to do it, and that's what we all got to do.
Okay, my brother, you take care. Best of the holidays to you and your whole staff over there. We'll talk in January, all right?
Thank you, Flash, and Merry Christmas to you and everybody else, and God bless.